Imagine this.
I have no regrets.
So when I saw this moment, I was just thinking about myself and a lot of emotions and grieving that I have experienced. I don't know how the executives over at Turning Point USA sleep at night, okay? I don't know how you can present yourselves as a Christian organization and not be dedicating yourself to the truth.
A man quietly orders a private DNA test on his own children and never gets the chance to confront the truth before his life ends. Candace Owens says Charlie Kirk pulled her aside with something so personal, so heavy, that it still shakes her to this day. According to her, the DNA results came back, and what they showed wasn't at all what Charlie expected. She claims it broke him, stressed him, and pushed him into a silence nobody around him ever understood. And now, Candace says Erika's recent moves, the gag order talk, the sudden power shift, and the contradictions in her story all point to one question. What exactly was Charlie trying to uncover before he died? And why is everyone scrambling to shut Candace down? Stay right here, because once you hear what Candace just revealed, you'll never look at this case the same way again. When Candace first stepped forward and hinted that Charlie Kirk had shared something deeply personal with her, people didn't really understand the weight of what she meant. It sounded like typical commentary at first, the kind of emotional reflection friends make after losing someone close. But as she continued speaking, her tone shifted. The calm, steady way she described their last private conversation didn't sound like a casual memory. It sounded like a warning she had carried on her shoulders for months, waiting for the right moment to finally let it out. According to her, Charlie didn't just vent about stress or frustrations. He confided in her something so personal that it changed the entire way she looked at the situation after he passed. Candace says Charlie pulled her aside quietly, away from cameras, away from staff, away from even the people closest to him. He told her he was planning to take a private DNA test on his children. Not because he wanted drama, not because he had a plan to expose anything, but because something inside him felt unsettled, like a tiny voice he couldn't ignore anymore. She described his expression in that moment as the look of a man who was carrying more questions than answers, trying to hold everything together without letting the world see the cracks forming. People online couldn't believe it at first. How could someone as publicly confident as Charlie Kirk be dealing with something so personal and painful in silence? But Candace insisted it wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a moment of truth, a moment where he simply wanted clarity inside his own home. She said he felt pressure from all directions, from work, from expectations, from the constant public spotlight. And at the same time, he felt like something behind closed doors wasn't lining up the way it should. And that's what pushed him to take that step toward answers. The way Candace tells it, the DNA results came back sooner than expected. And they weren't what Charlie thought they would be. She didn't go into specific details, but her description was enough for the internet to fill in the silence. She said his whole mood shifted after that day. He became quieter, more distant, and noticeably stressed, like he was trying to process something impossible without letting anyone see how heavy it felt. According to her, he didn't even have the chance to sit down with Erika and talk things through. Whatever those results showed stayed locked inside him, pushing him into a kind of emotional tension no one around him fully understood. As soon as Candace revealed this, online timelines exploded with reactions. People started replaying old interviews, speeches, and clips of Erika, trying to see if there were any signs, hints, or odd moments they might have missed before. And that's when some viewers began noticing things they hadn't paid attention to at first. They pointed out how quickly Erika shifted from mourning to stepping into Charlie's role. They noticed how her interviews focused more on leadership than grief. They even highlighted moments where her tone and expressions didn't match what people expected from someone who had just lost a husband under tragic circumstances. Candace didn't accuse Erika directly. She didn't point fingers or make claims she couldn't back up. Instead, she stayed focused on the contradictions in how Erika moved. The emotional inconsistencies, the carefully curated public image, the way she responded to certain questions with rehearsed phrases. Candace said these inconsistencies became harder to ignore when paired with what Charlie revealed to her privately. She said it didn't make sense for someone to ask for transparency publicly while also allegedly sending a private letter to a judge asking for a gag order. That contradiction raised the very questions Erika didn't seem ready to answer. And that's when tensions between the two women really began. Candace says she told the truth because Erika never asked her to stay quiet. She made it clear she had honored her promise. If Erika had ever asked her not to speak, she would have stepped back. But according to her, that request never came. Instead, Erika just moved in ways that made the silence feel even more unnatural. She began presenting herself as the strong widow carrying her husband's mission, while the internet watched closely and wondered if parts of that story weren't lining up. From here, the conversation shifted further. People started recalling moments that felt strange in hindsight. Like when Erika was on stage praising other men a little too warmly, her tone almost glowing in ways that didn't match a woman grieving. Or the moment she hugged a high-ranking official at a tribute event, her voice soft, her smile unusually warm, right after saying she saw pieces of her late husband in him. To some viewers, this came across as unsettling, as if there was something else lingering beneath the surface that they were never supposed, other than the unanswered questions surrounding her husband's final days. Candace said the story being pushed felt too neat, too rehearsed, too smooth for such a complicated loss. And the moment she said that, people online began connecting clips and statements they had ignored before. One clip in particular kept resurfacing. It was the event where Erika spoke about a high-ranking official and said she could see bits of her late husband in him. The crowd had already whispered about this moment long before Candace spoke, but now those whispers grew loud. The language she used, the softness in her voice, the way she stood close to him all made viewers uncomfortable. It was a tribute moment that somehow felt too intimate, too warm, too personal. And after Candace revealed Charlie's private doubts, that clip took on a whole new meaning for many people. They began asking questions Erika likely never expected to face. Candace also mentioned that several people had reached out with their own experiences around TPUSA and its leadership circle. She hinted at stories involving Tyler Boyer, interns, inappropriate behavior, and the kind of environment that made younger staff feel unsafe or confused. None of these claims were proven facts, but the resurfacing of old rumors created a bigger picture for viewers. Suddenly, Charlie's life didn't seem like a clean story of leadership and family. It looked like a maze of tension, secrets, and private pressures coming from every direction. And that's when people began seeing Charlie's alleged DNA decision differently. Before Candace spoke, the idea of a DNA test might have sounded dramatic or exaggerated. But after hearing about the environment around him, the pressure from staff, the changing tone at home, and the growing contradictions in his personal circle, people began saying that Charlie's choice made emotional sense. If a man feels like his world is shifting under his feet, he might seek clarity in the one place that matters most, his family. And if the result from that test shook him deeply, as Candace described, it suggested he was carrying more fear than anyone knew. Candace said she believed Charlie felt betrayed by many people around him, not just one. She described it like a storm closing in on him from all sides. Supporters said her calm, steady way of talking about him felt real, felt grounded, felt like she was honoring something he never got the chance to resolve. Critics said she was stirring the pot. But regardless of the opinions, one thing became clear. The moment Candace spoke, the world stopped accepting the polished version of events. They began looking closer, listening harder, and questioning everything they had been told. Erika's defenders rushed online to defend her, but they didn't answer the specific questions Candace raised. Instead, many attacked Candace's mental state, calling her unstable, emotional, or unpredictable. To her supporters, it looked like an attempt to silence a woman who wasn't playing by the rules. They said if Candace were truly wrong, people would disprove her claims with facts, not insults. Why attack her instead of addressing the DNA test? Why discredit her instead of explaining the contradictions around gag orders and transparency? Why go after her character instead of giving a timeline that makes sense? Candace refused to be pulled into personal attacks. She kept her tone steady. She didn't raise a voice or cry or lash out. She simply said she would not stay quiet. Not when Charlie trusted her with something so heavy. Not when the story being told didn't match the reality she believed he was living. She said silence was part of the problem. Silence was what allowed confusion and fear to grow inside Charlie's world in the first place. And she would not allow silence to bury his final doubts. As she spoke more boldly, something unexpected happened online. More people began messaging her, claiming they had their own concerns about the situation surrounding Charlie's last days. Some mentioned strange moments. Others recalled comments he made privately. A few mentioned things about Erika's behavior that seemed off long before anything went public. Again, none of this came with concrete proof, but the pattern itself created momentum. It made Charlie's alleged DNA decision feel less like paranoia and more like the final straw in a much bigger story. For many viewers, the biggest question became simple. If everything was truly as innocent as the public statements made it seem, why did Charlie feel the need to order a DNA test quietly? Why didn't he go through normal channels, talk things out openly, or confront anyone? The answer people kept returning to was the same one Candace had mentioned. He didn't feel safe. Not emotionally, not personally, and certainly not within the circle he trusted most. As the noise grew, Erika's team allegedly responded quickly with legal pressure and warnings. People online said it looked like they were scrambling to regain control before something else leaked. The speed of their response, the tone, and the attempt to paint Candace as unstable only fueled the belief that something deeper was being hidden. And in that environment, Candace's refusal to back down became even more powerful. She said Charlie wanted truth, not protection, clarity, not silence. And if the DNA results really did change everything for him, then the world deserved to know why. That determination set off the next wave of chaos, pushing the situation into a place no one could look away from anymore. As the pressure around the situation grew heavier, people began realizing something important. This wasn't just about a DNA test anymore. The conversation had shifted into a larger question about loyalty, trust, influence, and the hidden dynamics inside Charlie's world. Everything Candace revealed opened another layer, and with each layer, the story moved further away from the polished narrative that Tbusa tried to present. Suddenly, people weren't just analyzing Erika's behavior. They were digging into the environment surrounding Charlie himself, looking for anything that might explain why a man so publicly confident felt so privately cornered. One moment that started spreading across social media again was a footage of Mikey McCoy walking away from Charlie right after a serious incident. Some viewers had already found the clip unsettling months ago, but with Candace's new revelations, the clip hit differently. People noticed how calm he looked, how casually he was speaking on the phone, how his body language didn't match the chaos unfolding behind him. The contrast between the emergency happening around him and his relaxed demeanor made people question whether he knew more than he ever let on. And since Erika had publicly praised him, even calling him amazing on stage, the clip resurfaced with a new wave of suspicion. Viewers began asking why someone so close to Charlie acted so detached in such a critical moment, and whether this calmness played a role in Charlie's growing feeling of mistrust. This is where things really began to unravel online. Candace's claims made people go back to every single video, every speech, every event Erika appeared at after Charlie's death. And that's when they noticed something else: timing. No one expects grief to follow a perfect schedule, but viewers said something about the speed of Erika's transition didn't feel natural. One moment she was receiving condolences, and shortly after, she was standing on stage with a tone of empowerment, excitement, and ambition. People started wondering how her public rise aligned with Charlie's private doubts. Did he feel something shifting at home long before anyone else noticed? Was a DNA test his way of trying to regain control of a life that felt like it was slipping away from him? Candace described the energy surrounding Charlie as suffocating. She said the more she learned about the people around him, the more she understood why he felt the need to move quietly. And then came the point that made the internet stop scrolling for a second. She said Charlie felt let down by everyone. Everyone. That word echoed across social media because it meant what he was going through wasn't an isolated issue. It wasn't just one moment of doubt. It was a pattern of disappointment, confusion, and broken trust. And if he truly felt that way, the DNA test may have been the last piece he needed to confirm what his instincts were already telling him. As more online discussions unfolded, old rumors about the Tbusa work environment resurfaced. Some people claimed Tyler Boyer had a long history of inappropriate behavior around interns and younger staff. Others mentioned past complaints that were ignored or buried. Again, none of these claims were presented as verified facts, but the sheer number of old whispers returning to the surface made viewers wonder what kind of atmosphere Charlie was navigating daily. If the workplace felt chaotic, predatory, or unprofessional, then it made sense why Charlie felt overwhelmed from every angle. Some viewers said it felt like he didn't have a safe space at work or at home, and that combination created the emotional pressure Candace was describing. Candace didn't dwell on these rumors directly. Instead, she focused on how they contributed to the environment Charlie lived in. She said a man who feels surrounded by half-truths and shifting loyalties will eventually stop trusting the people closest to him. He'll stop sharing. He'll start keeping secrets. And that's exactly what Charlie did when he ordered the DNA test without telling Erika. To many viewers, this quiet decision wasn't the action of a man trying to expose someone. It was the action of someone trying to protect himself emotionally. Someone who needed answers before he confronted anyone because he was afraid of what might happen if he got the truth wrong. Candace then turned her attention back to the gag order. She said that if the story was as simple and clean as Erika claimed, there would have been no reason to ask the court to silence anything. The moment Erika allegedly tried to restrict information is the moment Candace says she realized something was off. Why hide things if transparency can clear your name? Why block information if the truth is on your side? These questions didn't come across as hateful or emotional. Candace asked them calmly, directly, and with a tone that made people lean in rather than pull away. And that made her message even harder to dismiss. Erika's supporters responded with speed and intensity. They questioned Candace's motives, mental state, and stability. They said she was creating chaos, feeding conspiracy, and exploiting a tragedy. But Candace didn't budge. She said that if questioning contradictions made her look unstable, then so be it, because silence would be worse. She said she owed it to Charlie to speak up, especially if he never got the chance to face the truth himself. Around this time, more people began privately messaging Candace with stories and details. Some spoke about strange events in Charlie's last few weeks. Others talked about conversations where he hinted at stress or doubt but didn't go into full detail. A few mentioned moments where he seemed distracted or worried, even when he was surrounded by people who claimed to care about him. These messages weren't proof, but they created a pattern that matched the story Candace was telling. They painted a picture of a man who felt emotionally isolated even while surrounded by a large team, family, and a national platform. And then came the strangest twist. After Candace questioned the contradictions around transparency, Erika publicly shifted toward demanding cameras in the courtroom. She went from allegedly seeking a gag order to insisting everything should be public. Viewers said the sudden change in tone felt less like clarity and more like control, almost as if she realized the narrative was slipping away and needed to redirect it. The contrast between privacy behind the scenes and public transparency on camera only raised more questions. What changed? Why the sudden shift? And did it have anything to do with the DNA test Candace revealed? Candace pointed out that Erika's confidence felt unnatural. She said it didn't make sense for Erika to act as if every detail of the case was perfectly aligned, especially when so many pieces didn't add up. She asked why Erika seemed so eager to accept a version of events that still had gaps and inconsistencies. The questions were piercing, the tone was controlled, and the internet couldn't deny how uncomfortable the whole situation was becoming. Viewers began saying that Candace's calmness made her revelations even more believable. She didn't seem like someone looking for attention. She didn't look like someone chasing drama. She looked like someone who had seen enough contradictions to stop pretending everything was fine. Her delivery made the allegations feel heavier, and the pressure on Erika intensified. The more Candace spoke, the more the story drifted away from Erika's narrative and toward a version that felt messy, emotional, and deeply personal. The reactions online became overwhelming. Some demanded proof, others demanded explanations. Many wanted Erika to respond directly to the DNA allegation, but she didn't. Instead, the focus remained on controlling the conversation, limiting details, and maintaining the public facade. This silence only fueled speculation. If the DNA results were meaningless, why ignore the claim? If the story was clean, why not address it head-on? These are the questions people kept repeating, and the lack of clear answers made the mystery even deeper. Candace stood firm. She said Charlie wanted truth, not performance. She believed he didn't get the chance to reveal what the test showed. And as she spoke, people began to realize the DNA results might be the key to understanding everything else. The stress, the silence, the contradictions, the sudden shifts, the tension at home, and the cracks in trust that he never had time to repair. And that's exactly where things reached a breaking point online. Because once people started believing that the DNA results truly changed everything for Charlie, they began wondering what those results actually were, and why the people closest to him seemed determined to bury them forever. As the conversation reached its peak online, people realized they weren't just reacting to Candace's claims anymore. They were reacting to the silence surrounding those claims. Erika wasn't addressing the DNA question. TPUSA leadership wasn't addressing the contradictions. The legal threats floating around didn't address the inconsistencies. Everyone seemed to be speaking loudly about everything except the one thing Charlie allegedly kept hidden until his final days. That silence started feeling heavier than any allegation. Viewers said it felt like watching a room where every person knows the truth but refuses to say it out loud. The turning point came when more old clips surfaced showing Erika speaking with an almost scripted calmness about the case file. She insisted she had read everything and believed it fully captured what happened to her husband. She kept repeating that the situation was true evil and that the world needed to see that evil for themselves. But as those clips circulated again, people couldn't shake the feeling that her certainty sounded too prepared, too smooth, too rehearsed. It didn't match the raw confusion and unanswered questions that even supporters were still struggling with. Candace pointed this out plainly. She said it didn't make sense for Erika to speak with such confident finality when so many details remained unclear. And her steady voice, her unshaking tone, made people sit up and listen. What really caught the internet's attention was a contrast between the pain Charlie allegedly carried privately and the polished way the story was being presented publicly. People said it felt like two completely different realities. One where a man was burdened with doubts he never spoke out loud, and another where the people closest to him were trying to move forward without addressing those doubts at all. This divide made the DNA test feel like the missing piece of a puzzle that no one wanted to acknowledge. As more viewers began discussing what might have been in those results, the speculation grew intense. Some believed Charlie discovered something that shook his entire sense of family. Others thought the results confirmed feelings he had been suppressing for a long time. No one claimed to know for sure. But the way Candace described his reaction, quiet, stressed, emotionally unsettled, made people believe the results were significant enough to shift everything inside him. And if that was true, then the pressure around him in those final days might have felt even heavier than anyone realized. Candace said something else that made people think deeper. She said Charlie didn't share the DNA results with Erika because he didn't get the chance. But she also hinted that he might have hesitated because he didn't feel fully safe confronting the truth with her. This wasn't an accusation of wrongdoing. It was a reflection of doubt. Doubt so strong that a man chose silence over confrontation. That detail alone made thousands of people question what was really happening inside their home, and whether the public image of unity was masking private cracks that neither of them ever spoke about publicly. While all of this played out online, Erika's team allegedly continued issuing warnings about defamation and stability. The move looked strategic to some viewers, but to many it looked like panic. The more pressure applied to Candace, the more people online said it only made her story seem more credible. They argued that if her claims were baseless, the simplest solution would be to present receipts, timelines, or statements clarifying the truth. But instead, everything seemed focused on shutting her down, discrediting her, or painting her as emotional. And that behavior felt familiar to people who had watched similar scandals in the past. As viewers revisited every detail, one question rose above everything else. If Charlie trusted Erika completely, why would he secretly test the DNA? The decision didn't sound like a man acting out of impulse. It sounded like a man acting out of fear or doubt. Candace described him as someone who had been let down by everyone around him, someone who didn't know where to turn, and someone who didn't want to accuse anyone without proof. That kind of emotional isolation is difficult to understand from the outside, but her description made many people feel like Charlie was navigating far more than he ever shared publicly. In the days following Candace's revelations, more subtle signs emerged in old footage. Erika's rapid transition into power at TPUSA, the affectionate tone she used toward other men in tribute events, the scripted nature of her responses, the contradictory messages around cameras and privacy, the smile that appeared too early in interviews or lasted too long in uncomfortable moments. Each piece by itself might have meant nothing, but together, they formed a mosaic of questions the public had never bothered to ask before. And now, they couldn't stop asking. Candace reminded viewers that grief looks different for everyone. She acknowledged that no one can predict how a person should act after losing a partner. But she emphasized that the emotional tone didn't match the unanswered questions. She said the speed, the confidence, the narrative control felt off. Not wrong, not evil, just off. And that feeling alone kept the entire story alive online even when official sources tried to smother it. This entire situation transformed once people began connecting Charlie's private doubt to Erika's public certainty. It created a tension that no one could ignore. Because if the DNA results were truly meaningless, then why did Charlie react so intensely? If the narrative was perfectly clear, then why were so many pieces still missing? And if Erika had nothing to hide, then why did Candace's questions feel dangerous enough to require warnings and silencing? Candace's voice remained steady. She said she wasn't chasing drama. She was honoring the final conversation she had with someone she respected. Someone who wasn't here to speak for himself. She believed Charlie wanted truth, clarity, honesty, and she said she wasn't going to let silence bury the doubts he died carrying. Not when the people controlling his story seemed unwilling to address the one detail that could bring everything into the light. The internet followed her lead. They began treating the DNA results not as a scandal, but as a symbol of clarity that Charlie sought but never received, and a symbol of honesty that many felt the public still hadn't been given. Whether the results were shocking, sad, or unexpected, viewers agreed on one thing: the truth of those papers mattered, and someone was trying very hard to keep that truth out of sight. And as the pressure mounted, the story reached a point where speculation no longer felt like rumor. It felt like a reflection of something deeper, something unresolved, something hidden behind legal motions and public speeches. Something that Charlie never got the chance to bring into the open. Candace ended her message with the one thought that left viewers silent. She said Charlie didn't get to finish his search for truth, but now the world needed to finish it for him. And until someone addressed the DNA results directly, the questions would never stop. Because if those results really changed everything for Charlie, then they might be the one piece of the story that changes everything for the rest of the world too. Before you go, tell me this. Do you think Candace is exposing a truth Charlie couldn't speak, or is she opening a door that was never meant to be touched? Should the alleged DNA results stay private out of respect, or does the public deserve clarity when the entire narrative feels stitched together with missing pieces? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is far bigger than one family. It's about trust, loyalty, and what really happens when a voice gets silenced before the truth can surface. Stay tuned, stay curious, and if you want more deep dives like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss what comes next.